Who will be Donald Trump's vice president? How's it going, guys? Welcome back to UnwokeThoughts. Tonight, we are talking about Donald Trump's potential vice president picks. As you see here, this is Carrie Lake with Donald Trump, and a lot of people have speculated that she could potentially be his vice president pick because she has been in the news a lot lately due to the fact that she exposed the GOP trying to bribe her to drop out of a race last year. So she's gotten a lot of press lately. So some people feel like she could possibly be one of his potential vice president picks. But Donald Trump addressed the issue of vice president a couple weeks ago when he said the vice president pick doesn't really have that big of an effect on votes. But he said that he has an idea of who he might pick as vice president. And there's one person in particular who he believes has a 25% shot at becoming his vice president. Watch.
You said in our town hall that you had an idea, or you might have already decided about your VP pick. When do you think you're going to make that?
Well, it's never really had that much of an effect on an election, which is an amazing thing. Both election and primary, it's never really had much of an effect. I may or may not release something over the next couple of months. There's no rush to that. It won't have any impact at all. The person that I think I like is a very good person, pretty standard. I think people won't be that surprised. But I would say there's probably a 25% chance it would be that person.
Is Senator Tim Scott on the list now?
No, he's a great guy. You know, he endorsed me. There's an example. Nikki comes from South Carolina. Tim Scott is from South Carolina.
So Donald Trump says the person that he thinks he likes, the person that he's given a 25% chance to be his vice president, he says is a good person and would not be that much of a surprise. So I think that kind of eliminates Vivek Ramaswamy. Unfortunately, my boy Vivek Ramaswamy, I love the guy, but if he was picked as vice president, I do believe that would be a little bit of a surprise. He says, okay, he's a good person, it's not going to be that much of a surprise. So Vivek is a good person, but I kind of would be surprised. But I would be pleasantly surprised if he was picked as vice president. But another potential vice president pick would be Ben Carson, and I think this would be a fantastic pick. Ben Carson is very smart, he's very wise, and he is kind of the type of guy that you could see as vice president. He doesn't make a big show, he doesn't steal the limelight, and he's kind of quiet, which is, I believe, someone that you need in contrast to Donald Trump. But he went on Fox News earlier today, and he was asked whether or not he would potentially be Trump's vice president pick. Watch.
This is also one of the reasons President Trump is doing so well in the polls. Has President Trump contacted you to be his VP?
I don't want to talk about what we've talked about, but we've talked about what can we do to save this country, and that we will work together to make sure that America remains America. There's so many things that are going on right now. You know, compromising the DOJ, using it to injure your opponents politically. These are things that occur in China and Russia and Cuba. Those are not things that are supposed to occur in this country. Yeah. And we should be alarmed, and I think the American people are alarmed.
Do you see more support from the black community for President Trump?
Absolutely. I used to go to places and be the only black face. Not anymore, not by a long shot. And I think people are starting to recognize that the Trump administration was on the side of Black America. The things that they enacted were extremely positive.
So when directly asked about whether or not Donald Trump contacted him to be his VP, Ben Carson kind of coyly says, well, I don't want to talk about what we talked about, but one of the things that we did talk about is how we can save America. And I think this is one of the big reasons why Ben Carson would be a fantastic pick for vice president. He is clearly America first, and we all know that in order to save America, we need to have politicians in office who are America first, and I believe Ben Carson is one of these individuals. So I think it'd be a fantastic pick, not to mention that it would really increase visibility in the African-American communities, which, you know, is neither here nor there. But when you are a politician running for president, you have to think about these types of things. So that could be a benefit for Donald Trump as well. But it is a little bit of a mystery who Donald Trump might pick as his vice president because he's been pretty secretive about it. He hasn't revealed a whole lot of information. So this has led people to speculate, obviously, who would be Donald Trump's vice president. And Matt Gaetz, he has an idea that Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor of Arkansas, might be selected as Trump's VP.
You know, there's been, rumors, Tim Scott, all of a sudden maybe the VP. We're talking, other names are popping up. I don't think it matters. I really don't think it matters who Trump picks as a VP. But you're inside. You talk to the guy a lot. I noticed how quickly he embraced Ron DeSantis, which I think is a great thing for 2028 MAGA Ron DeSantis. We'll talk about that in a second. But does it matter who the VP pick is? And do you have any sort of indication? What's his name? Gorka told me he knew who it was on Thursday. Do you have any ideas?
If I were in President Trump's position, I would pick Sarah Huckabee Sanders, someone with executive experience, someone who knows the battle space, a fierce, loyal defender of President Trump, someone who has great credibility with the MAGA movement, someone who I think can hurt Joe Biden with searing critique and can help us with a lot of suburban moms who live the life of Sarah Huckabee Sanders every day. So she's my top pick. I don't know who it's going to be, but we can all have a favorite, right?
That was my pick last week. I said the same thing, Matt. Congressman, I agree with you that she's a great one. She's under the radar. She has supported him policy for the whole entirety of his presidency as well. That's really important stuff.
So Matt Gaetz, his top pick for Trump's VP would be Sarah Huckabee Sanders because she has the executive experience and she has backed Trump in just about all of his policies. And, I agree with this one too. There's just so many good picks out there. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a firebrand. I think she would be very good for Trump's campaign. Plus, she's a woman. And like I said, just like with Ben Carson, when it comes to these presidential elections, sometimes those things matter. But in the long run, that probably wouldn't factor into Trump's VP pick. He probably would pick somebody who is loyal to him. And, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she has been very loyal to Donald Trump. But this brings us to Tim Scott, and this is one of the ones I believe has a good chance to become Trump's vice president. I'm not really super thrilled about this one, but I could see this happening. I personally believe it is between Tim Scott and Ben Carson, but I could be way off on that. Nobody knows. I'm just going with a feeling. Just last week, I thought it was Vivek Ramaswamy, but now I'm like, probably not. But John Cornyn, and yes, that is a little bit of a red flag, but he called on Trump to pick Scott as VP.
I think if the president would pick Tim Scott as vice president, I think that would be really a good ticket. But I think you're right. There needs to be, after a primary, there needs to be a broader appeal than just the primary voters. You can't win with just your own base.
So John Cornyn calls on Donald Trump to pick Tim Scott as his VP because, as he says, there needs to be a broader appeal than just your primary voters. And when he says broader appeal, I assume he means the African-American community. Now, in my opinion, I believe that Ben Carson would be much better for that broader appeal. But that's just me, and I don't trust Tim Scott as much as I trust Ben Carson. But this one brings us to the last potential VP pick, and this one is way, way out there. Like John Cornyn said, you need to appeal to a broader base, and this one would definitely appeal to a broader base, although I think it has no chance because, like Trump said in his own words, that his pick would not necessarily be a surprise. So people are speculating about whether or not RFK Jr. might be picked as his vice president. He was asked about this, but he said, I would not take that job. I'm flattered that President Trump would offer it to me, but it's not something I'm interested in. Listen.
I'd also asked him about something I'd heard President Trump had called him early on and asked him about being his VP. I asked if it were true. Take a look. If he asked you that today, what would your response be?
I would not take that job. I'm flattered that President Trump would offer it to me, but it's not something that I'm interested in.
Did he reach out, or his team?
People from the team have reached out to me.
So very interesting indeed. He says that he would not be interested in the job, but he does say that people from Donald Trump's team has reached out to him. And I wonder what those conversations consisted of. That would be very interesting to hear. But who do you guys think will be Trump's VP? Do you think it's going to be Kari Lake, Tim Scott, Ben Carson, or maybe Donald Trump is throwing us all off the trail by saying it won't be a surprise, and surprise, it's RFK Jr. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. But until then, I will see you on the next one.